Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. So, in my today's topic, I'm going to cover the concept of web application firewall policies that we can set on our Microsoft Azure in order to protect our API or web application from receiving malicious HTTP requests, basically. So, let's go through this quickly how we can create it. Okay. So basically, these web application firewall policies are a kind of you can configure them as a global policies or gateway level policies, but most of the time we configure them as gateway level policy where one gateway basically protect almost each and every web service or web API in your current environment, which may be dev, QA, UAT or prod. Okay, so this is how we configure these web application firewall policies. Okay, so one web application firewall policy for all the environment. So because this is the common practice, because the rules are or the policies are same, that's why no need to create separate for each and every environment. Okay, have one web application firewall policy and use it for the protection of all four environments or the number of environments you are going to target. Okay, well, that said, now let's quickly start with this. So, if you want to create it, go to the Microsoft Azure in the search bar or in the search text box. Simply enter Web Application Firewall Policy, and you will see a page something like this. Click on a Create button. So, you will enter into the Create a Windows Application Firewall Policy wizard or page, I can say. Okay. So what does this say? Basics. Malicious attacks such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and other OWASP top 10 threats could cause service outage or data loss and pose a big threat to web application owners. Web application firewall protects your web application from common web attacks, keep your service available, and helps you meet compliance requirements. So that is the main use of these policies. Okay, that's a pretty crystal clear or explanatory text that we got in the creation page. Okay, now move on with the fields what we need to fill. Okay, so the policy for what kind of policy? There are two types of policies: regional WAF or application gateway, and one more is it's called a global policy. Okay, or global WAF. In most of the scenarios, we should go with the regional WAF in order to protect our web application or web service. So I have selected for regional web application firewall in order to protect my environment or my suite of environments. Subscription, select your Azure subscription. Okay, maybe prod or non-prod, it's up to you. Resource group, again, you can select any one resource group and make use of this policy for all other resource groups. So always try to create these policies in your production resource group. Okay, and remember, each resource group represents your development environment or your application environment. So I would prefer to create this in production resource group. That would be helpful. Policy name, so I have followed a convention like this: Central India. Okay, C and I will give me the region, the Central India, basically. And the D, it denotes what environment is this. In my case, I have given as dev, but you can put as PQ for your production or QA environment. MBS, company name, and WAF, Windows Application Firewall, and the instance, which is 01. You are free to choose a convention which suits your requirements. Location, which is Central India, that I had selected. Policy state, this should be enabled during creation. And a policy mode, most important field, keep it prevention not detection, because the moment your Windows application firewall detects these kind of vulnerabilities like accesses, cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection, immediately it will block the request. It won't allow it to go to your web service or web API. Once all these things are selected, click on next, which will take you to managed rules. This is the most important section. Here you will see all the rules which this particular Azure resource is going to provide us. So let me go down and yes, now I'm in the managed rules. A pre-configured rule set is enabled by default. This rules set protects your web application from common threats defined in the top 10 OWASP categories. The default rule is set is managed by Azure. Okay, and a further instruction, I think it got cut, needed for new attack signatures, some upgradation related it seems, or new versions that they are going to introduce for your managed set. Okay, so I have selected OWASP underscore 3.0, which is most commonly used. The latest version is 3.1, but you are free to choose which suits your needs, or if you have currently some applications which are running on this managed rule sets. So OS 3.0 specification I'm going to use, and just a quick intro. Can you see here? It has listed out the most common categories. There is a general category, there is a method enforcement, scanner detection, protocol enforcements. Like inside that, there are n number of rules which are going to be tested or run against your incoming request from the client. Okay, so after selection of this, we can click on next, which takes us policy settings. But before that, just for information, I have expanded and I'm showing you what all kind of role categories we have. We have RC, we have PHP, we have cross-site scripting. Under cross-site scripting, can you see the number of rules we have? It says detected via library injection, script tag vector, event handler vector, attribute vector, JavaScript URL vector. So there are many things. Okay, which are by default enabled, but we have a flexibility to disable based on our needs and our application architecture. You will come across such scenarios where you are required to disable some of the rules, okay, due to the limitation of your application, or maybe the data structure which your application is handling. Okay, okay, then now I enter the policy settings. Now what it says is, well, it's the same thing. It seems a web application firewall policy allows you to control access to your web application by a set of custom and managed rules. There are multiple settings that apply to all rules within this policy. Okay. Now, exclusions. Okay, what it says: select specific parts of incoming requests to exclude. All other items in the request will be evaluated. Now, there will be scenarios if you are using Azure AD based authentication, then you will end up with getting some URL parameters like ID underscore token, okay, or some parts like like you can say some parameter name containing special characters like dot or something. So in such scenarios also, if you have not included in the exclusion list, then your application won't work, because by default it is enabled and there are no exclusions. And yes, those such requests will be not processed by your web server because your gateway will prevent them. Okay, now in order to include them, you have to include one by one. See the expressions, how they are. Match variable. Okay, what is the variable name, what kind of operator you want to use, and what is the selector. In the next screen I will show you how to configure them, but just for information I am, yeah, explaining over here. Now, global parameters, which is must for each and every request being sent to your web application. Inspect request body, turn it on. If you keep it off, then this processing or yeah, policy checking won't happen, so it must be on. Maximum request body size in kbs, that is a standard, it should be 128 kb. Now if you send any http request from your client application or from your postman or any client, and if it exceeds 128 kb, then such request will be forbidden from being processed by your web service or web API. The application gateway itself terminate that request and puts a log into its Azure maintained log settings. Okay, if you query it, you can very clearly see what is the reason and why it was prevented from reaching the actual service. And there you will find actual rule ID and the explanation saying that, boss, your request body exceeded the allowed limit of 128 kb. Okay, just for your information, maximum file upload size, that is 100 MB. If you try to do something more than this, then again your gateway will prevent your request and you will get you will get, sorry, 403 forbidden error in your network tab of the browser. You can increase this size as per your requirements. Okay, these are the standards. Custom rules, again, I don't want to go with any custom rules. Very in a very rare scenarios we are required to create our rules, but I would be very happy with the OWASP 3.0 specification. So I didn't do anything and I continued associations. Most important part, after creating a web application firewall policy, you have to associate with the application gateway or a HTTP listener. Okay, and how to create application gateway and HTTP listener, I will show you in my next or in upcoming videos. But for now, my scope or my focus is on this only, that is firewall policies. So you have to associate an existing application gateway. Basically, how we can do that? By clicking on this add association. Okay, also what does this association says? So associated application gateways, see the description. Associate this WAF policy with a specific application gateway or a listener or a root path. A WAF policy can be associated with multiple listeners, root paths, or application gateways. Gateway will remove and replace existing WAF policy associations with the selected application gateway. There is a provision to specify this kind of managed rules or OWASP rules at the application gateway level also. But if you are making use of Windows application firewall policies, then disable the managed rules basically in the application gateway level and force it to use the policy specified rules by making association over here. I hope you understand this. Okay, if you enable on the gateway level also and if you enable on the application firewall policy level also, then it will be difficult to debug your application. Even if it passes through your application gateway, sometimes it may be struck in the firewall policy levels or vice versa. But what I would recommend, disable at the application gateway level and make your application gateway by adding association to this application firewall policy to make use of these policies. Well, that said, this is how the screen will look. Click on next. No. Okay. How this drop down looks when you click on add association. You want to associate application gateway and HTTP listener root path. Okay. If you have all three, associate all three over here so that all will be compliant with one policy basically. So in my case, see, I have associate. Okay, when you click on associate button, this add associate button, the Azure portal will automatically list out all available application gateways that we have created. In my case, there are many application gateways I have created. So I have selected one, and inside that application gateway, I have these many listeners. Okay, so just understand that an application gateway is basically a load balancer. Okay, and apart from that load balancing, it also take care of forwarding the incoming request to the appropriate web service or web API. This HTTPS listeners are basically your web API or app service, I can say. And you will create one HTTPS listener abstraction over those app service or API service and give them a name like HTTP listener. And these listeners will be associated with your app gateway. Okay, so whenever an client application sends a request, basically first it reaches the application gateway. Okay, then application gateway will decide to which HTTP listener this request belongs to, and then it will forward it a level of extra redirection basically, which we have to bear in order to protect our applications, so nothing can be done. So click on add button, it will be listed over here, and go back to the next screen. Yeah, I have added whatever listeners I had, all four I have added here. It will automatically show the associated application gateway, source group, everything I have. Yep, striped out because these are confidential, I can't show over here. Now click on review plus create button. Once you click on review plus create button, can you see the web application firewall policies are getting created under this wizard, that is WAF policies, and you can see the WAF policy that you have created. Okay, so that's it from creating web application firewall policies. And most important thing being, in a web application firewall policy, you just click on any one web application firewall policy that you had created. So you will enter into this screen, that is the policy settings or the WAF page, the web application firewall policy page. Here click on policy settings in the left navigation pane. So I will show you how to add some exclusions basically. Okay, so there are some built-in selectors, or you can see your application's request parameters, which must be passed from your application gateway. If they won't pass, then your application server or service won't receive that request and nothing will happen. And you will be presented with bad gateway error, which is very cryptic and difficult to debug. So how we can get rid of this issue? So what you have to do is, there is there are three fields given, basically an expression, match variable. Now request arg names operator equals, if there is a parameter with the name id underscore token, then exclude it from this web application firewall policy getting executed against that parameter. Okay, because by default, in the eyes of application firewall, if a parameter contains any underscore dot, okay, it treats it as a vulnerability and it will prevent such requests. But without this default request which handles our application authentication or xsrf token processing, we can't do much. So that's why we have to exclude them. These are exceptional and we have to provide the exceptions. So in my case, I have provided the exclusion for all these id token for authentication code, xsrf token, user agent, ASP.NET Core, and then the openid connect dot some variable name, and ASP.NET Core dot openid connect, okay, in order to process dot also. So this is how you have to add exclusions basically. Okay, by doing this, I think you can unblock your application request getting processed for special parameters. Okay, hope that is pretty clear now for you people. And with respect to managed rules, when you enter into a web application firewall policy, click on managed rules. Okay, and you have a flexibility to enable or disable a rule. Okay, in my case, most of the time it has been found that whenever I upload a file, any kind of file, okay, any format of file, very rare scenarios it has been seen that this particular rule was getting matched and my request was getting blocked by my application firewall policy. Okay, same file, if I tried in other environments or on my local machine, it works exactly fine, no issues. But on server machine I was facing this issue. Okay, and you can't debug a text for image file. Okay, it's a cryptic, basically you don't understand what's going wrong. And also after doing a lot of analysis, it found that 200004 is a kind of false positive. So many people have given justification and solution that disable it on your firewall policy. So how can I disable this? Simple, go to the managed rules basically, and yeah, here expand the general section, click on the rule. Okay, it may be, in your case it may be a different rule. Click on the rule, check the box. Okay, and now after selecting the rule, you have two options, enable or disable. In my case I want to disable. Click on the disable and click on save. That's it, this rule will be disabled, and now this rule will not be executed against your request now onwards once this is saved successfully. So there will be scenarios where you are required to disable some rules. Okay, so it may be this one 200004, or it may be the one more rule which basically matches whenever some special symbols are identified in your request, and without those special symbols, I think your request is useless or meaningless. You have to pass it only in such scenarios. Just disable them, and yeah, that will unblock you from further processing. Okay, I hope this is pretty useful for you people. Okay, and how this web application firewall policies will help you to protect your applications. But guys, there are some pros and cons. Okay, and there is a trade-off. uh, I would like to highlight that. Okay, on one hand, web application firewall policies will protect your web applications or your web servers. Okay, but on other hand, there are such scenarios where, one such example as I explained, this kind of false positives 200004, for it will match very randomly, and which will block your application processing. And if this happens on production servers, just imagine what happens. Okay, first thing, on local machine you are not able to debug, you are not able to reproduce this, but it only happens on production. And if you see, it is not something code related, and it is some issue associated with your file, or it may be a false positive or some issue during matching the request body. Okay, so in such scenarios it creates a lot of issue. Okay, that's what I have seen in my experience. Okay, um, there are many such scenarios while sending a plain text containing a simple dot or any kind of very frequently used characters also, the gateway used to match and it used to block the requests. Again, we were clueless, we used to debug a lot, and then after reading a lot of documentation, we found that, oh, this is the issue over here. This kind of thing is blocking basically our web application requests. So do remember one thing, do remember one thing, when you are developing an application which is guarded by web application firewall policies, okay, when you send a request, especially http post or http get, or almost all http request I can say, just ensure that while sending data, it is better to encode them. Okay, I think you would be aware the JavaScript methods. A simple explanation I'm giving, I'm not going to any specific programming server side programming language level, but JavaScript level, whenever you send a request, just make use of JavaScript method called b2a, a to b and b to a. Okay, a to b is meant for, it seems a to b is meant for encoding and b to a is for decoding. Just make use of these methods in order to, in order to avoid this kind of issues where your web application, not, I can't say it's an issue, but at least avoid sending this kind of special character, special data to your application. Okay, just because there will be need that you have to send this kind of special characters in order to process your request. So what I would suggest is, whenever you construct a request in your JavaScript or server side code, encode the data, send it to the server, and from the server side decode the data and do whatever processing you want to do. Okay, this will definitely save you from this kind of issues. I hope you people understood the concept and what value the firewall policies add and what are the some drawbacks associated with this. Okay, I hope you people enjoyed this session. We'll meet again. Thank you.